welcome to the Nick Art and Comics podcast. Today we're sitting down with Jeff Manley, a fantastic creator from Traverse City, Michigan. We're going to be discussing comic strips, creative process, and how superfluous threats of lawsuits are the least punk rock thing ever. Let's get to it. So yeah, just a general introduction. Where are you from? How old are you?
All right. Well, my name is Jeff Manley. I am 44 years old, and I live in the beautiful city of Traverse City, Michigan, which is known for nothing. It's the closest it's known for is it's the summer residence of Michael Moore. So as a Canadian, you probably don't know who Michael Moore is.
Oh, I know who Michael Moore is.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He has a film festival here that's been going for like 12 years or so.
So how long have you been reading comics?
Before I could read? I assume that's usually the general answer, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, most people like it's as a visual medium, it's really easy to like when you can get into it without being able to read and still tell a story.
I mean, my father was an avid newspaper reader, and so I discovered comic strips before anything else.
What was your favorite comic strip?
Peanuts was my favorite, but I read every single one. Like even Sally Forth and Rex Morgan, MD. Like if it was drawn and had words, I was reading it. Like I know way too much about Kathy's personal life.
Do you still, is that something you still keep up with, like the dailies, or?
No, because why? Like, it's like people are just cashing a paycheck now. You know, it's not like there's very few. Like the only currently running strip that I read online is Wallace the Brave by Will Henry, and it's like it's up there with like Calvin and Hobbes level of humorous children's strips. I've always been more of a strip person.
I'll have to check that out. We don't have much people come on here and talk about strips, so it's going to be...
well, that's mostly what I do because I get really bored trying to do full stories.
Oh, yeah?
Like, I get like 60 pages in, and I'm like, how many pages was I going to do? Oh, man, that's a lot more to do. When you do a comic strip, it's like, hey, I got one done. It's complete. And then, I'm doing another one. And then eventually, like, I got 50 of them.
Nice. I've been working on some, like, short story, like, 4-pagers a lot, and I find that's a lot more freeing than trying to, draw, write, and color a 48-page book, which I'm doing right now, and it's just, that's a lot of work.
Right. I think the biggest mistake people make is they're like, I've got to have, like, my blankets. And it's like, no, you don't.
you are no Craig Thompson, sir.
Yeah, you can have just... a 4-pager.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, Traverse City is the birthplace of Craig Thompson.
Oh, awesome. Okay, there you go.
Yep,
his work is just amazing, man. That guy can do so much with a brush.
It's one of those things where you look at it and you're like, I quit. Like, every time. Like, even if he just doodles something, you're just like, okay, that's too fantastic. Stop it.
Yeah, between his, his detail and his pace, like, the guy can draw so quickly, too. I think one of my favorite pieces by him is in the Madman 20th anniversary, like the big hardcover, and he did a Madman piece for that. I'll throw it in the video. It's just incredible.
Oh, awesome. Can't wait to see it.
For sure, man. What was your first comic? How old were you?
My first comic book was my dad was a big flea market guy, and so I was at a flea market and I found issue 2 of a 3-issue Marvel series that was an adaptation of Indiana Jones and what was it? The first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah.
Nice.
And so I read that. I hadn't even seen the movie. I was so young, but I could read at that point. So I read that middle part of the movie probably like 50 times before I ever saw the movie.
Nice.
I was like, oh, I know this part.
Do you remember anyone who was working on it, or is that just like some...
Oh, no.
Okay.
It's one of those things where it's like, I know what it was, but I haven't seen it since.
Cool, man. Well, I'll pull up the cover and I'll throw up some pages during the video.
Yeah. And
what,
then I was a DC. I was never a DC guy, and so then from there it was just like hitting the Spider-Mans and the X-Men and the X-Force and all that early '90s crap.
nice. What's your favorite comic?
Um, like of all time.
Yeah, all time favorite. Like it can be. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not to be too strip centric, but like Calvin and Hobbes. But I'm also like comic book wise, like Bone. I'm definitely, which is still very much comic strip.
Hmm.
Simple, cartoony.
Yeah, and some
Not
other.
that, not that simple means easy, because only Jeff Smith can do what Jeff Smith does.
Yeah, trying to do those nice curves with that brush that perfectly every time. Do you have a favorite writer?
I'm one of those. The art matters more than the writing. So no, like I don't. I This is gonna sound really bad as being a cartoonist on a talking to another cartoonist, but I really don't read that many comics. Like it basically I read my friends' comics just because I want to guilt them into buying my comics.
How about artists? Do you got a favorite artist?
Like many famous artists, like favorite artists. Let's see. Have you ever heard of Alex Robinson?
No. What's he done?
His biggest book was for Top Shelf, and it was literally his biggest book. It was like 600 and some pages. It was called Box Office Poison.
Okay.
Came out in like '99, the brick version, and it's currently being like they're reissuing it by IDW in color because it was originally a black and white indie book. But that guy's been my friend for like 20 years, and everything he does, he goes like and does really huge books, so it takes him like 10 years to do a book. And then like Jim Rugg, everything he does is just like magic.
For sure, big Street Angel fan.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I met Jim at a space convention in like 2001, but I was like, who's that guy with the pink comic books? Because he had like, fold and staple pink books back then, and I didn't really talk to him. I was just like, oh, hi, nice books, And then I followed him online ever since, for like almost 20 years.
Nice. Yeah, he does great stuff. I'm really excited for Octobriana. Like that's gonna be a blast.
Yeah, I know, and it's like every time he does one of those videos where he's showing it off, you're like, keep going. Stop! Don't stop there. Why are you stopping?
You kind of answered this earlier. I ask this question every time. What's more unforgivable, a good story with bad art or a bad story with good art? So I think we got your answer already.
Yeah, so many times I like buy a book because I'm like, oh, this looks really cool, and then I'll flip through it and then I'll never read it, and it'll just sit on a shelf.
You know who says good story with bad art is better?
Writers?
Yes, exclusively.
Yep. Yeah, I'm currently living with a friend of mine, and he is one of those book people where he reads all the time, and he's always like, oh, got a big boner for Neil Gaiman and all that stuff, and I'm always like, yeah, well, I don't really care for the art of Sandman. And he's like, what? It's like the stories. I'm like, whatever.
I'll give it to Gaiman. He kind of makes these little zines apparently that like kind of paste the book for his artists. So at least he's doing something there for the breakdowns.
Yeah. No, I'm not throwing shade on Gaiman at all. He's I understand that he deserves to be respected in the industry, but I'm barely a comic reader.
Do you read much foreign work or material?
Being a comic strip guy, I love Euro comics. All the Tintins and Asterixes and ones that I have no idea what the words are, which is helpful when you're reading like French Belgium comics that aren't in your language. You're just like, oh, hey, pretty pictures.
Yeah, especially if they're drawn by Herge.
Yeah. People are going to watch this video, your video, and they're going to be like, I don't think that guy can read.
He can draw, though, so that's all good.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on separating the art from the artist?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because, like, the other day I was in a BAM, which do you know what a BAM is? It's I don't know what the acronym is. It's basically like a border. It's what Borders turned into, basically. So it's like a bookstore, music store, but who buys music in a store anymore? And they had Brandon Graham's King City, like for like $7. Like it's like a giant ass book. And I was like, wait a minute, wasn't he like really horrible to women? And I'm standing there thinking, did I read something on Twitter about this? Am I not supposed to buy this book? And I bought it, and I was like, I haven't read it because, you know me, I don't really read comics. But and I felt guilty. I'm like, what if all the women that he has oppressed, supposedly, I don't remember, I didn't look up afterwards. Like, what if they find out I have this book, and then I'm supporting somebody that. And if Brandon Graham's watching, I'm sorry, I don't know what you have done or not done. So it's really hard because it's like, oh, it's such beautiful artwork. But there's some people that's like, their actions are so bad. I'm like, nope, you're done. You are done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I live in such a small area, that we have a Comic-Con every year. And, like, the biggest names that we get are, like, Ryan Stegman has come many years. Let's see, the guy who does Invincible, not Kirkman.
Ryan Otley?
Yes, Ryan Otley's been there.
I met him way back in like 2005. That guy's nice as hell.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's so like super shy. Like he's like very quiet, and you're just like, you draw some amazing stuff. Be a little more boisterous or something. But one year, Scotty Young was there, and it was like, holy shit, Scotty Young, you're amazing. And that was like back when he was just starting Wizard of Oz. So it was like before, like every month you could buy like 30 covers with Scotty Young on it. And but anyway, so one year they had Ethan Van Sciver there, and it's like that was the one year I didn't go. I had like a family vacation planned or something, and so for the next few years, people were just like, that guy is such a jerk. I paid him, and he never mailed me any art. And it's like, oh, well, guess what? Now it's coming out that everybody doesn't like him. And I don't care if I offend Ethan Van Sciver.
Yeah, who does, man?
He's literally yelled at me on Twitter before, and it was just because I was commenting on a friend's tweet, and he came out of nowhere and was just, like, blasting. I'm like, hey, guess what? I don't give a crap about your Green Lantern drawing or whatever.
Yeah, his ego, like, that's one of the, like, I just think that him and all his supporters as well, like, just, like, pick someone who's better at art at least. If they're gonna have, if they're gonna be purely despicable, like, find somebody who can draw a fucking background.
Wait, I don't think he knows what the word background means.
And yeah, just like the stiffest. I mean, I remember back like 10 years ago, like people were giving McNiven shit for having stiff art. And I love McNiven's art, and I've never really found it. But like Ethan Van Sciver made a career out of stiff art.
His art is so stiff. It's like he bases all of his drawings off of those wooden maquettes that you buy at like Hobby Lobby. Like every single one of them is posed like it was like he took the little wooden arms and he's like, okay, I can do this. And then just like copied it exactly.
Yeah, no background.
Field of stars. I mean, Hobby Lobby wasn't selling a background. Background is like the back of his drawing desk, like every time.
How about personal stuff? Like, what do you got coming up in the works right now?
Right now I'm throwing together a collection of a comic strip that I post on Instagram and Facebook, but nobody looks at it on Facebook. Which is called Riley, a Teenage Bigfoot. It was called just Teenage Bigfoot until I got some nice emails from a punk band called Teenage Bigfoot, where they're like, hey, we're trademarking the name Teenage Bigfoot, and we want you to stop. And I'm like, that's not very punk of you. And I'm like, we could have like, synergized our corporate brands, but they were just all like, please stop using that, or we're going to call a lawyer. And I'm like, A, you're a punk band, you don't have a lawyer. And B, you're not a very good punk band. But
Slam!
Well, my punk music tastes like begin and end at like Against Me, and that's it. So shout out to Against Me if they're watching.
Yeah, well, that'd be a good place to start and stop.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, if you start at the beginning of Against Me and go to the end of Against Me, it's like a wide range of genre, so it works. That's all the punk you need. And so then I basically was like, I put it out to the cartoonist group that I'm in, and they're like, this is bullshit. Can I say bullshit?
Oh yeah.
Okay. They're like, this is bullshit.
Did we just call Ethan Van Shiver a fuckwad?
I don't think we did, but we should have. And so they were like, this is bullshit. Fight them. It's like, I don't like, I know I'm doing this YouTube interview with you, but I'm not a famous person. I'm not. Like my last book probably sold like 20 copies, so it's not like I'm worried about them coming after my fortune from doing Teenage Bigfoot. So I compromised and I was like, hey, what if I just put Riley, the name of the character, who is a Bigfoot teenager who likes to do a lot of drugs and skateboard and kill humans. Killing humans isn't the main goal of his life, but if somebody sees them, he kills them.
Okay, that's awesome, man.
And so I was like, what if I just because they emailed me after I did a mock cover of the book, and it just said Teenage Bigfoot really big on the front, and then the next day I got an email from them saying, we don't want to have to call our lawyers. And I was like, okay. And so I said, what if I call it Riley, a Teenage Bigfoot? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. I'm like, if I sell 100 copies of this book, it might be the only time I collect this book. I'm very scattershot with my creating. If you go and search on Amazon, I have 18 books from the past 10 years. So it's like I create something and I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever, and then I do it for a year, and I'm like, okay, what's the next greatest thing I'm going to do? I'm not as much as I admire Charles Schultz, I'm not looking to do Teenage Bigfoot for 50 years.
Nice, yeah, for sure. That's probably a good way to do it too, because you can draw people in with more than just one tone, one kind of book.
Yeah. I used to listen to this podcast. It was Comics Lab, where they talk about webcomics, the two webcomics creators, and shout out to Comics Lab. And they were basically, the one guy is like, don't brand your social media based on a character. Always brand it on you, the cartoonist, because that way, people will follow the cartoonist and not just the product. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been on Instagram, I'm a manly cartoonist. Mm-hmm. And so you go there and you see whatever I do, whether it's Teenage Bigfoot or some comic book that I'm drawing that I stopped drawing after 70 pages.
I think that's really good advice. I saw Todd McFarlane give some very similar advice, and he actually received a bit of blowback, which I thought was interesting. They're like,
really?
Yeah, they're like, well, he's known for Spawn. It's you forget that he left Marvel Comics as Todd McFarlane to go create Spawn. And
yeah,
everybody knows Todd.
He only had a couple of the highest selling books of all time that weren't Spawn.
Yeah, exactly.
Before he made Spawn.
What's the hardest part for the creative process for you?
Time. And it's... Oh, okay. I got lots of time. My time management is my hardest problem. Just before this interview, I was like, I can get a game of Fortnite in. I got to second place.
Nice.
And died. But probably slightly ADHD, where it's just I have to really focus in and jump into the project, and then I never do more than one page in a day. It's even if I'm going and I get that page done, I'm like, that's the most amazing page I've ever done. I'm like, I don't really want to start another one. There's too much weed that needs to be smoked. Which could be part of the problem.
No, I don't know. As a freelancer, the first thing I did was get rid of all my video game consoles. Just can't have it. And then, of course, my wife got tired of not having a video game console, so she came home with the next year with a...
That sounds like a good wife.
Yeah, and she'd be like, I bought you Modern Warfare. I'm like, why would you do this?
Yeah, I bought my roommate's Switch because he never played it, and then I just fill up my day playing solitaire on the Switch. And I'm like, there's got to be a cheaper way to play this game.
What's the easiest part of the creative process?
The drawing. The writing is always harder, but I don't feel like I write. I feel like I'm one of those weirdos that have the character lives inside my head, and so I'm just like, oh, what happened if Riley, a teenage Bigfoot, stumbled onto a big pile of magic mushrooms? And then it's like, what would he do? And it just kind of like jumbles around in my head for a while until I get the motivation to throw it onto a piece of paper.
What advice would you give to someone just starting out making their own comics?
I think the best advice I ever heard was you don't get worse at something you do every day. If you're sketching every day, after a month, it's not going to look worse than the first day you started. It's just not possible. Mm-hmm. And so just keep going no matter what. Don't worry about your audience. Your audience is yourself, mostly because I am my own audience. Every teenage Bigfoot that I draw, when I write it, I laugh. When I pencil it out, I laugh. When I ink it on my iPad, I laugh. When I post it on Instagram, I reread it and I laugh. I've done 55 strips, and I've reread every one of them at least a dozen times, and I laugh every time. Every time I'm like, damn, this is the best one. And then I'm like, I better read the next one. I read the next one, I'm like, wait, no, this one's even better. And so just make yourself, have fun with yourself, So draw comics for yourself. Don't try to shove your art into a package that you don't believe in, because you can tell you're Ethan Van Schuyler.
Awesome, man. That's some really good advice. We've got the last question here. You've been given an opportunity to work with any IP that you wish. What would you choose and what would you do with it?
I always say Plastic Man, because something about Plastic Man appeals to me. I think it's probably the 70s cartoons that I used to watch when I was a kid, and just a crazy character. Of all the stretchy characters that exist, Plastic Man's always been the best. But I have no idea what I would do with it. I would probably just draw him, wrapping himself around things.
You can work as a strip character for sure.
Oh, definitely. But then my problem would be is like DC comes calling and they're like, Jeff, we want you to draw a Plastic Man. I'm like, excellent. And then they're like, we need more than 4 pages. And I'm like, oh shit. I gotta actually think about this.
And you can't turn him into an aqualung. You're not allowed.
Yeah. Oh no.
Cool, man. Well, thanks very much for appearing on the show. I'm very excited to see what you're going to be doing with Riley, Teenage Bigfoot. I can't wait to get that in my hands because I absolutely love the art style and the gags.
I love the gags. Every comment I get on Instagram where they're like, hey, this is hilarious. I'm like, I know it's hilarious. I love that I've drawn this.
Do you have a Kickstarter, or is that just going to be something that's available on your website or something?
Here's another piece of advice for people is don't have a Kickstarter if you don't have a following. If you're getting 20 likes on something you draw on Instagram, you're going to get half of a Kickstarter, bid. Kickstarter is made for people that have a following, and unfortunately, until after this video goes up, I won't have a following until then. This video is going to cement me in the comics culture to where people are like, I know that Jeff Manley guy. He was on that video.
They call me the Kingmaker. The Kingmaker of video comics.
I'm going to have to dedicate every book I do after this to you. With love and hugs.
So where can they find your work then? Just on Instagram? Would you want to plug any places?
No, just go to Instagram, Manly Cartoonist. Please click the little heart buttons. I mean, it really helps my ego. Even though I've already advised people not to worry about, your following. I still want to stroke my ego. But yeah, and then if you search Jeffrey Manley on Amazon, I mean, I've got a ton of shit out there. My main advice when somebody's like, oh, you've got 18 books on Amazon, what the hell, what am I going to buy? And I always go straight. So I did a book called Fail, and it's a collection of all my failures, or what I deem failures. So, comic strips where I got started and I did a ton of concept work, and then I got like a dozen strips, and then I was just like, I don't see this going anywhere. Or like sketches I would do for cons that never sold. You know, all these like sad, depressing things where it's like, Jeff, why do I want to look at all your failures? But then I give like little inspirational things before each section, like, did I fail the audience or did the audience fail me? And so that's a good jumping in point. And then I did a kind of a follow-up called Abandoned Ship, where it was all my comics that I started and just abandoned ship. I just stopped working on them. And so it's like a 300-page book of like, oh, here's 40 pages of a comic, and then just abruptly ends.
That's awesome, man. Both of those are really cool ideas.
Yeah, no.
That's super cool.
And then one of my other favorite books is it's called Drawn from Memory, and it's just a small little book, but I took suggestions from people on like Facebook, like, hey, what characters should I draw? And so then all these people were giving me suggestions, and then I drew them without any reference. Like, can you draw Yoda without looking at Yoda? Like, what does that look like? And for me, it looked awful. It was so scary. So these are just like the worst. Like, they're not all poorly drawn. They're just not on model at all. Or like somebody would suggest like those furry little things from Strawberry Shortcake or Rainbow Bright or whatever, and I'm like, how am I going to pull that out of my ass? And I tried, and it's fun for artists to look at. Mm-hmm. Like, so I've got books. I mean, just find my books, whatever.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for being on the show, Jeff, and keep on making comics.
You keep making comics.
Thanks again, Jeff, for being on the show. Links to Jeff's Amazon and Instagram are in the description. Go check out his stuff. Go buy his books. And if you like this video, please give it a like and a share. Peace.